Is Jordan's not joining us,
I
right?
don't think so. Today has been, well, obviously, we'll talk about it in a second. This breaking news about Dolph stepping down, and then he's got AB Super Bowl news to write up today. You know, it's another 3-pack BBD day.
Awesome. A 3-pack.
Yep.
You know, when I used to publish like more than once in a day, I wouldn't publish the next day. That was back when I was doing it all myself. There's a little anecdote for you.
So what you're saying is, after this, yeah.
I'm the only one that gets the emails. Where is it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So breaking news today: Dolph Vandenbrink is retiring from Heineken. Of course, he spent I don't know, a few years at Heineken USA as the CEO. That's how we all got to know him. He's not dead, so you know. But when people leave the beer industry, I talk about him in the past tense. So I mean, he was. I thought a great operator. And a quick anecdote on Dolph is like when he first started at Heineken USA, the first couple of months he just traveled the whole time. And I met him like the first week. He came to Dallas, and I met him like at a Chili's. This was like 3 days after he started, and we had like an hour and a half lunch, and where he just asked me questions. It was him trying to learn the industry, and I found that refreshing and unique, and that he did a listening tour, and he learned how the business works before he started making grand decisions. So, adios, Dolph.
Yeah.
So what are y'all's takes?
Well, I mean, I didn't realize he was there for 30 years almost, because he looks like a young guy. But yeah, he joined in '98, and then I looked back at what we said, our send off when he moved from Husa to I believe it was Mexico, and then he went to Asia. But I believe it was you that wrote it. Could have been me, but probably you. You had like nice things to say about, he took over in 2009, and that's obviously Great Recession. Not easy, but kind of started to right the ship a little bit. And he didn't create Most Interesting Man, but he, as you said, he didn't screw it up, right?
Right.
So that's interesting. And yeah, I mean, he's going to stay on through May 31st. But I do have to toot my own horn here, because my one prediction last year was that there was going to be a lot of like CEO turnover in the beer business. And obviously we had Gavin, and then we have Michael Spillane from Boston Beer stepped down too. So Jim's there, probably maybe interim sort of. And then of course Pabst. And then of course outside of the beer industry as well, there's been a lot of turnover at the top.
That was a great prediction. And I remember kind of chiding you about it, because I'm like, really, you're gonna predict that people are gonna lose their jobs?
But it was of their own volition, right?
We won't. Yeah, because I think there will be more broad layoffs this year in the beer industry. The CEO, do we really care? We can always predict that, because it's not like they're going off broke. Yeah, and I got to hang. The last time I hung with Dolph was in Vegas last year. I went to their Formula One thing, and so we got to hang out there. And he was, kind of like let's call that the class of CEOs. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about Brito. I'm talking about him. I'm talking about Graham Mackay. They were M&A guys.
Yeah.
And that's the job they had to do in that job. And, those days are over. There's nobody can get any bigger. Mm-hmm. And so now the role of the CEO is cost cutting, streamlining, and then getting organic growth with the brands that you already have. And that's hard. That's harder than financial engineering and finding out, which AAA or AA bonds you're going to get to finance the next deal. That's why, Gavin was a good CEO, because he was a CFO, and that's what you needed. You needed a financial guy to run these companies, or a huge cost cutter like Brito was, or a visionary like Graham Mackay.
Well, so and now you have right now you have Rahul at Molson Coors, who we're having speak next week at the summit. One of his first speaking engagements since taking the helm, but he, I think, has made it pretty clear that they intend to buy. They intend to buy things that are, quote, meaningful to them. And I'm going to ask him to build on what he means by meaningful. Are we talking about a Heineken USA, maybe, right? Or are we talking about a unicorn, or so very interesting.
That'd be some tail wagging the dog. But what else is there?
Yeah.
other than organic growth, and then just like little bolt-ons, like beatbox.
What do you think about is there a chance in 2 to 5 years that some of these companies start to buy things? Maybe AB would do it. I mean, obviously there was the metal can plant, but buy things really outside of beverage, whether it's snacks or even media companies, taking stakes in media companies, like, right? Because nobody wants anything to do with beer.
Well, I mean, I see what you're saying, but that's really out of fashion in the corporate world right now. That was really fashionable 20 years ago. I mean, let's take Seagram's. That the Edgar Bronfman took his Seagram's, went into debt to buy Warner Brothers, and then then did another reverse merger with Vivendi, and then got eventually caught up with AOL. And he lost his entire fortune.
Yeah.
Like his entire well, they said he took their family fortune from 9 billion to under a billion. I guess they're not broke again. But yeah, I mean, you get over your skis, man. Now, I will say that Bev Alc and non-alc, they're close enough because they share distribution techniques and the way they're distributed.
For sure.
Yeah, I think you will see more M&A between Bev Alc and non-alc, both at the distributor bottler tier and at the big producer tier, because that's really, there's no antitrust situation there because they're two different industries. So what else? I'm trying to think.
We had the dietary guidelines. I mean, it's kind of old news by now, but it's still sort of reverberating. It came down Wednesday, of course, and it came down basically as a win for Bev-Alc, moderation rather than total abstinence. The actual DGAs say limit alcoholic beverages, consume less for better health. But obviously, we went away for the no safe level rhetoric pushed by the WHO and ICPUD. Excuse me.
ICPUD.
Excuse me.
The thing I'd say about that is I was curious to see the aftermath. And the New York Times and USA Today predictably are having a meltdown. Like, oh my God, the government's telling you that you can just drink all the time except for breakfast, which is not really what they said. Yeah. They took away of 1 drink and 2 drinks, which it seemed arbitrary anyway.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know if you saw this morning in the Telegraph, and they said, turns out alcohol, even moderately heavy alcohol, is good for you. So you can see the tide starting to turn on public sentiment. Having said that, the early bird word is that bird is the word. Bird is the word. No, the early signs are that this will be the most abstemious dry January ever. And that I read a quote this morning that 54% of Americans do not drink at all. That surprised me, which is the highest. That was from the
Gallup poll, yeah.
The highest. It was repeated in another. Yeah, I know this old news, but it's I didn't realize that's the highest abstemious rate in 90 years, meaning since Prohibition.
Yeah, I agree with you to that point. The tide is starting to turn. We talked about the GQ article where it was a health and wellness writer, and he basically was like, the title's literally, my 2026 resolution is to drink more. And this isn't a guy who was already, a big drinker. I mean, he is an Oura ring wearing, he says he would go to these meetups and it was like LinkedIn in real life. And he was like, it's like a cult. And it is. I'm calling it the cult of wellness because it is a cult.
Everybody's in run clubs.
It's like, it's just weird.
Why
you're not
is it
allowed
a run
to be
club?
human. Well, does YY still drink or no?
He does, but not like I did at that age.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's also interesting. But anyway, I'm with you. I think it's going to take at least a year for us to start really seeing the recovery in the data.
That makes sense, because the thing is that all these things go in waves. I've been around long enough to see it. Probably, Cosmos will come back.
Oh yeah.
We're starting to get to a point where Sex and the City is vintage.
Oh yeah.
So.
Well, yeah. I mean, the what is it? Espresso martinis came back roaring. Right? Like, yeah. And people are health minded, but obviously Bevalg is more than just about health. And I'm pointing to, and Danelle from Three Tier is going to speak to some of these parallels in different categories, but at our summit, sorry. But what I thought was interesting is, for example, extreme sports are way up. Those
Yeah.
aren't good for you, right? Like it literally by definition, extreme sports are like sports you play where you might die, and that like instantly, and that is, super super up. So people don't only want just things that are good for you. It's just,
Yeah. I mean, Monster's up.
right. Yeah. Energy beverages. Yeah.
It, you
And
know,
that's interesting. I was having this conversation with Scott Scanlon too, because there's so many dang new energy beverages that keep coming in and coming in. And we were talking about this. And he mentioned, like, well, I can't really drink too many of those, my doctor said. And we don't hear that yet, right?
right.
About energy is bad for you because this next wave of energy was all about functionality. But I think that's going to come around at some point, and we're going to realize, oh wait, there's limits to this too. And this is that going to be the bad thing again? And then Bevelg has cover, or but there's a lot of different
I
dynamics.
mean, remember when caffeine was just
Right.
terrible for you and everybody quit drinking coffee and,
Yeah.
yeah, it goes in waves.
Yeah. So
These idiots,
interesting.
I swear. I mean, it's a huge health and wellness, but also nicotine patches have never
Right.
been more popular. I'm not
Yeah.
pouches, not patches.
Yeah. Yeah.
Zens. A Monster and a Zen is
Oh
like
God.
pretty much the best thing in the world, other than a nice cold beer.
Right. Right. Right.
What do y'all think of the new Miller Lite work with what's his name?
Christopher Walken. I think
Yes,
it's great.
cowbell. I do
think
too.
it's so good. I mean, you watch that ad and it literally evokes for me like being in the on-premise back when I was still single, like the hunt
Right.
and like the darkness and the feel. And it was great. And Christopher Walken is just solid. And then Bill, after we shared with everybody, then I showed it to Bill and he put it in his work chat. And there were a bunch of old timers that were like, man, that reminds me of when I met my wife, right? Like,
Yeah.
finally we're connecting. It feels organic and it's fun. And I think it's a great ad. So we'll see if it sells beer.
Right. I think it's very topical. I love Christopher Walken. I mean, we all need more cowbell in our lives. My only critique would be, do young people know who Christopher Walken is?
Hmm.
Do you be? You do,
I
right?
do. Yes.
I
I'm
would
not quite
consider you
Gen Z.
young.
You got to ask Hannah that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
I feel like to get the temperature on that. But I don't know. I feel like he is in some memes.
Yeah.
Like I feel he's on some TikTok memes. So I think they probably don't know his body of work.
Yeah.
Right.
They
That's a good
probably
point. He's
Yeah.
he's definitely, he's somebody.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
He's recognizable as a celebrity.
I think he's in I feel like he's referenced in a lot of rap songs too. So they could
Well, he's
him
Angelina
from that.
Jolie's father.
No, that's John Voight.
Oh, that's John Voight.
But
Sorry.
he does look kind of like John Voight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different guy. But all right. Well, great Wednesday Warehouse, folks. We will see you next week. We'll get this up later today, Jen.
Okay, cool.
And looking forward to it, guys. We'll see you in
Yeah.
San Diego.
So with us today is Ben Larson. He's CEO of Vertosa. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Vertosa. Yeah.
Vertosa, and it's a cannabis emulsion technology company, and they've got a pretty lengthy list of clients that people in the beer industry are familiar with. The who's who of intoxicating hemp beverages, including brands like Pabst Blue Ribbon's High Seltzer, Boston Beer's Teapot that's sold in Canada, Uncle Arnie's, and others. And their team works with suppliers like Tilray and Surly. So to kick things off, maybe we can talk about what exactly a cannabis emulsion is and how it's used by these beverage makers.
Sure. Yeah. So the oil extracts from the plant tend to be a highly viscous oil, which we all know generally doesn't mix with water too well. And so our technology is nano emulsion based. We take that oil extract and basically shrink the droplets down and make sure that they're dispersible and stable in water so that you get a predictable effect, highly bioavailable, fast onset, and that the experience is repeatable as you consume these products over time.
Is that only used for cannabis beverages, or is it a technology used in other products also?
Yeah, good question. Nanoemulsions are broadly used across supply chains. They've been often used for how a product looks, like if you want to add cloudiness to a product, give it that more natural appeal without, it being totally natural. Or you can do flavors. Really, it's just a mechanism by which you stabilize the oils in the product, and then the way we're using it is just tends to be more precise than way other ingredient suppliers in the space use it. And so ensuring that if a can says 5 milligrams of THC, which is actually a very small amount of oil, that is homogenized through the product, that it's stable in the product no matter when you consume it off of the shelf, and that you are actually consuming that. And so there's a lot of science that goes in behind all that, but that's kind of the high level.
Yeah. I know Jen and I were talking about, I don't know how into the weeds we can get on emulsion technology, but it's
Right.
definitely
No one really wants to talk about that.
No, I mean, I think it's really interesting. And I'm curious, I mean, how long have you guys been doing this? When did you see the need for this in the market?
Yeah. The company is about 7.5 years old at this point. We started in the regulated cannabis market in California. That's when we started working with companies like Pabst and Can. And before that, I got in the industry a little over 10 years ago, and we saw that there was a large interest in beverage and kind of surveying the marketplace. There just wasn't a lot of great technology. There wasn't a platform for people to really rely on. And so we kind of knew that this scenario that we're living right now, that this was eventually going to happen. We didn't know exactly how or when, that it was going to be intoxicating hemp, as you said at the top. But we knew it was going to happen. And so we started investing in creating, a reliable supply chain partner so that people didn't have to go and reinvent the wheel every time they wanted to enter the space. Because that was literally happening 10 years ago.
Interesting. So is intoxicating hemp the majority of your business now, or?
As of today, it's about 65%. So we still operate across all legal markets, especially ones that sell beverages. We also have a facility up in Toronto, and Toronto is part of Canada, as everyone knows, but it's also part of a federally legal system. So we're able to serve all of Canada from that Toronto facility. And then hemp kind of spun up about 2 years ago for us, and has been growing like wildfire. And what we anticipate over the years is that there'll be a regulatory convergence, and cannabinoid, regulations will emerge and be more thoughtful and sensible. And so when we launched the company, we said we will provide these cannabinoids for wherever the products are made. So allow some of our brands to operate across the state markets, across hemp, across Canada. There are several brands that are doing that and getting the exact same ingredient, while we as a company navigate the complexities of managing all the supply chains and all those rules.
So what kind of services and products exactly are you providing for your we'll kind of use hemp beverage as shorthand, since that's typically what we're talking about for our purposes. But, like what kind of products are you providing them? How many brands are you working with? Kind of, a short rundown of kind of by the numbers.
Yeah, sure. Well, we keep it pretty simple as a business. We sell active ingredients for these products, right? But in order to do that and do that well and continue to sell through and make sure that those sales cycles that we go through are worth it, we try to set up the brands that we work up with for success. And that comes in a number of different ways, right? So we work with about 350 brands across North America. That is largely beverage. We do use the same ingredients as fast-acting ingredients inside of gummies as well, which are very popular in the regulated space and in some beverage markets. I know we've seen liquor stores in Minnesota, for instance, really heralding how excited they are about the edibles form factor. Although there's many reasons why we largely focus on the beverage side. What we also do, in addition to just selling the ingredients, is provide a very white glove service around that. And so whether it's product development and inspiration and kind of leading our customers through what is like state of the market. So like right now, obviously using minor cannabinoids and terpenes to kind of give a directionality to the experience, but also potentially leveraging full plant extracts like live resins and live rosins. And so making that all available to the product makers on a consistent basis is kind of what we do from a technical standpoint. But because we've been doing this for so long, and because we've kind of built an ethos around education and producing materials, writing handbooks, we've become a trusted educator of the distributors and the retailers and the major brands entering the space. And so when it comes to connecting people with, a co-manufacturer that does a certain form factor, we know what their capacities are, what makes a good fit. And so we kind of play matchmaker, though we don't really charge for that.
Are you the largest of your kind in the space, or?
We believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. And we have, a couple competitors that we keep an eye on, but for the most part, we know we have the largest customer portfolio.
Sorry, be back to you.
Oh, well, I was just going to follow up. So you're providing that matchmaking services, but like you yourself are not, Vertosa's not providing co-packing services. It's just the emulsion technology.
That's correct. That's correct. We work really closely with co-packers. We've learned a lot about co-packing because we've worked with so many different types of co-packers, to the point where we actually published a book called the Cannabis Beverage Manufacturing Handbook. And it goes basically from ideation all the way through the actual steps of production of how to create a high quality, stable beverage.
Along those lines, I'm curious what your quality control process and testing standards are like, because obviously we've been covering the hemp beverage market specifically the past few years, and testing has been kind of a loaded concern in particular for lawmakers. And also, I don't know that they can wrap their arms around kind of best standards and, best practices and kind of how to evaluate whether a beverage contains the percent of THC in it that it says on the can. And so, kind of any insight you can give into that and kind of what you employ at Vertosa.
Yeah. It's a complicated answer because it's born out of the history and evolution of the marketplace and where we're at today and where we're heading. So starting in the beginning, I mentioned being born out of the regulated cannabis space, and that has actually served us well because what's required in the regulated space is very fine controls. So you have to test the materials when they enter and when they exit. It has to be completely clear of heavy metals, pesticides, molds, all these kind of things. But in addition to that, the states tend to watch products very closely, and even to approve products, you sometimes have to go through a shelf stability test. And so Michigan, for instance, is a market that we operate very heavily in, and you have to do shelf stability proof before your products get allowed to be into the marketplace, which doesn't exist in the kind of more open hemp beverage marketplace yet. We do anticipate that something like that will probably come along as rules get put into place. Similar rules have been applied to Canada and California. And what we've found as a company is that, in these markets that do have these requirements, we perform a lot better from a market share perspective because we have the experience of solving all these problems. And so we kind of knew that this was going to be a challenge getting into the hemp beverage space. And so we started really promoting a lot of self-regulation. And this has been supported by the organizations, the associations that support this category. And so you have the Coalition of Adult Beverage Alternatives, CABA. You also have the Hemp Beverage Alliance that have very similar codes of conduct. And those codes of conduct generally say that it's like you should be following these steps and making these assurances for your products. And I would say that as far as a self-regulated segment of the hemp industry, the beverage industry has done the most, right?
Yeah.
That to say is there's no regulations forcing it, so that's always going to be kind of a leaky bucket. And so what we've done above and beyond that is created a program by which companies can self-select, and we've even funded some of it for them to come through and get truly validated like we would a regulated marketplace product. And we're in just that kind of funny time. I was talking about the timeline. We didn't want to have to be doing the service. It really should lie with kind of a third party evaluator, same way you would get GMP certified, which we are. It's another way of us kind of holding the bar higher. Is that, we've gone through and started verifying products to prove to their retailers and distributors and the regulators that it's like they've made a good faith effort and that they should, if they follow this process, similar like you would follow a process authority letter, that they're developing a product that is stable and delivers on what they said. So our hope is that as these regulations start to roll out and become more structured, which is a big fight this year, is that some reasonable regulations get put into place to make sure that the guardrails are there for the sake of the consumer.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a long-winded answer, no. But I promised it was complicated.
Yeah, no. So you're doing that for the category, basically, right? So that the category can survive and thrive, right? Like
at the end of the day, we take a very long lens on this, and we need the category to be trusted. We need it to emerge and progress as it is, not just for the sake of the category, but for the sake of the entire plant, which everyone at our company, because we have been around as long as we have, we care a lot about how the general public perceives the cannabis plant. And this is kind of our first shot at being able to prove that it's trustworthy.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, obviously we have to ask this question, what do you think is going to happen with intoxicating hemp and, what's going to happen in the interim until November with, how willing distributors and retailers are to keep these products on? What's going to happen with, do you think the legislative wrangling to be able to pass something that allows them to survive? Like, with your 30,000 foot view, what is your best guess? What are you seeing?
Yeah. Great question. With how chaotic the last 2 months have been, it would be a fool's errand to really try to predict. Sure. But what I can say, my observation is that there is even more excitement now from both the consumer and the distributors and retailers who have committed to supporting the category and the brands. Like, everyone is saying that sales are better than ever. A lot of the first week of January was the best sales that many people have seen yet in the category. In fact, after the November appropriations bill was released that kind of created the quote unquote hemp ban, the week following was the best sales week that we had seen to date. So it's there's still a ton of support, a ton of interest. And there's more alignment now than ever. You have many of the hemp organizations hitting Washington, D.C. this month because there's a new deadline at the end of January that really needs to see the budget progress further so that there's not another government shutdown. So that's another option. People are talking about the fiscal year 2027 appropriations bill. Language for that is due in late spring. There's a number of independent bills that have to do with cannabinoid regulation. There's the Schedule 3 discussion. So this is the year that we're really seeing potential progression of the whole cannabis conversation moving forward at the federal level. So as someone who's been advocating it for over 10 years, there's a lot of momentum and discussion. It feels a little chaotic, but through chaos is where there's often opportunity. And we're getting a lot of signaling. I probably can't say too much about what I'm hearing directly from the Hill, but there is a strong appetite to preserve this category. And so the EO, the executive order that occurred at the end of the year, last year, really set the stage to revisit the hemp conversation and not take the appropriations language as the final word, but to put in something that protects more categories to serve consumers and frankly, the patients that are using full spectrum hemp, which is a different conversation. I will recognize. I don't like conflating the use of adult beverages with that of full spectrum hemp. But when it comes to hemp policy, They are intertwined, so to speak. And so more lanes are being drawn, and I think we'll start just incrementally seeing progress in the conversation week after week, month after month, and it'll accelerate right through probably, September to November this year.
Yeah. Yeah. One more for me, and then I know B has a lot more. But do you think, in all likelihood, if the hemp THC category in drinks at least survives, that the cap will be relatively low, at least at the federal level, and then states will be able to do what they want?
Yeah, I think probably one of two things will happen is that there will be a low cap and it will call into question like what happens to the states that have kind of ran ahead and created their own rules. Does it
Yeah.
act as a ceiling/floor where, if you've implemented your own, like states' rights kicks in, like similar to how cannabis regulations exist, like will that save Tennessee's like framework that they've created? Or those questions will be asked in advance of a bill. This would be ideal, right? And they come in with like a serving cap, a low serving cap, and then it leaves the states to determine how many servings they want per package and kind of allow autonomy through that. So the ideal moving forward, and it feels like the administration is kind of thinking like this, is like try to make the federal government smaller, their control smaller in some aspects. So you identify what's permissible and then allow the states to go in and be like, all right, we want to allow 2 servings per container when it comes to a beverage. It feels like that would be the easiest way to kind of frame it up in place while we have a number of states that have created hemp legislation.
I'm curious, like, are you finding, is Vertosa filling an advocacy role at all, or are you leaving that up to the brands that you're working with? I know you're doing education, so is that more on the back end of legislators just trying to wrap their arms around what all this means, or are you, advocating on the Hill, as a company?
Yes and yes. Yeah. So, ever since I got into this space, I said, if you're an entrepreneur, you're an advocate for the space. You're representing the space. And so be on your best behavior was the call to action a lot. But, we've been a very active member in the advocacy movement. We were a founding member of what was originally the Cannabis Beverage Association, that eventually got shut down because it was very California centric. And then we launched the Coalition of Adult Beverage Alternatives. Our Chief Communications Officer, Diana Eberlein, is the current chair of CABA. And us personally do a lot of work contributing to these efforts. I'll be speaking at the National Governors Association cannabis event at the end of this month in DC and do a fair amount. I'm also vice chair of the National Cannabis Industry Association. So spend time in DC doing lobby days and kind of rallying folks to get there. So yes and yes is the amount that we can invest in kind of being responsible and promoting a good, strong industry is just good for everyone's future, including our own. So it is like selfishly driven. It's like, we need an industry to operate in. But at the end of the day, I think many people in the industry, be it beverage or otherwise, do truly believe that this industry not only deserves to be legal, but that the world will be better for it, right? These are often pitched as better for you products. And so, yeah, it feels like we're fighting for the right side of history, and that feels really good.
I'm curious if you work with any clients that make medical marijuana products specifically, and if you're getting a sense that some producers may move in that direction, given the conversation around rescheduling and kind of this administration's focus on using cannabis as sort of a medical tool, and kind of what, if that's impacting where these companies see their future headed.
That's a really good question. One that I'm kind of been sorting through myself as someone who's kind of straddles both marketplaces. In the early days of my time in the space, I thought that many of the states were going to establish their medical programs and that they were going to lay over it like these distinctly different adult use kind of marketplaces. So you'd have medical products and then adult use products. What ended up happening over time is sometimes states didn't even bother with the medical and they started going straight towards the adult use. And then the products that were offered across both, it just ended up using, like, if you had a medical card, sometimes you just not have to pay tax or something like that, but all the products were the same. What I'm getting from where things are going now is that there is truly going to be cannabis as medicine as kind of a marketplace, and then you're going to have this more recreational adult use kind of concept. So I don't imagine too many beverage brands, for instance, bridging over and trying to take advantage of these, insurance coverage that the EO signaled. But what I do anticipate is more brands focusing on that as a market, because if a patient gets $500 of insurance to apply to a medical CBD product, 10 million consumers that maybe sign up for that. That's a pretty large marketplace, right? What is that, $5 billion or $50 billion? Anyways, I'm not going to do quick math. I'm going to embarrass myself. I got lost track into zeros. Anyways, we've been looking at it more seriously because, nanoemulsion in of itself is essentially a delivery mechanism for these cannabinoids. And we know it's fast acting and we know it's predictable. And so we're looking at the opportunities, and we've actually been working with a lot of institutions and universities on doing R&D around emulsion as medicine. And so in those aspects, maybe we could find a different base of customers to supply to.
Well, I know you wanted to get, back into why we're here, which is beverage and the beverage brands and the beverage retailers that carry these drinks. So in particular, while, all this legislation and federal conversation is in the backdrop, we have some pretty big retailers who have gotten into carrying hemp beverages specifically, including Sprouts, which is recently, last week announced it was going to start selling hemp THC beverages in over 100 stores. And so, what do you think that chain approach is going to be over the next year when it comes to selling these drinks? And can you provide any color on kind of what those at the top of retailers are thinking when it comes to this industry and the run room for it?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's proof that these products are selling, right? And it's no secret there has been softening sales of other beverage categories, but there is just very solid proof that these products sell when you put them on the shelves. And even if it's for a limited time, that's an opportunity to not only make up for that revenue loss that you might be experiencing from other categories, but to help become part of the conversation and instill that we get to keep selling these products. It's also, it creates an interesting conversation around like future products to enter the market. Like, how is the hemp beverage category going to mirror, future efforts of introducing new adult beverage style products, right? And so, like, this is a really interesting experiment for evolving what the adult beverage space could look like. But I think, kind of at the ground level, what we're seeing is that not only are they selling, like, people are seeing their colleagues, right, their contemporaries in the space do it, benefit from it, get excited about it, and it's creating that social pressure for more people to get involved. And so the more retailers that are getting involved, the more the distributors are getting involved, and that leaves, one last segment of the third tier that isn't necessarily framed up or required yet to be involved, and that's the brands. And I think what we'll start seeing as a result of all of this is the major brands, the suppliers, really taking a serious look at the category where maybe they've been slower to act than say the distributors and retailers were trying to replace revenue.
Well, then, kind of to piggyback on that, you've worked with a lot of the big names in this space, as we established. You're probably one of the largest, if not the largest, in this space. And I happen to believe that even if this segment survives, which I think it has a good chance of it, there might be a sort of culling at some point because there are so many brands in this space that seem to have kind of cropped up overnight. So, who gets this space? What brands get this space? And maybe you probably can't name names, right? You can't have favorite children, but what attributes do the winning players have in the hemp THC beverage space?
Yeah, I think you can probably put them in two different buckets. One is who knows how to build a really great brand, right? I think nowadays is a great example that's top of everyone's mind because they're just doing things that normal beverage brands do. They're doing like engagements at F1, they're doing engagements at music festivals, and these are places people would love to consume a hemp beverage. And so I think that's doing a great service not only to the brand for nowadays, but for the entire category, like showing people that it is very normal and it's showing up in normal places and it gets people inspired to do so. You mentioned Uncle Arnie's as another brand. There's someone that really gets the THC consumer, and they're not afraid of leaning into that. We worked alongside them for many years when it was hard for them to get investors' attention because all the investors wanted to invest in brands that were going to sell to the soccer moms. And they're like, no, but this is your consumer. And they've just proven not only to be able to serve consumers that, like the hippie appeal, but they do it anywhere cannabis products are showing up. So they're really popular with their higher dose products in the regulated channels. And then they're making that bridge and creating the lower dose products in the hemp channels. And so really cool to see them being able to do bridge. And there's innumerable other brands that are kind of following the suit of kind of these two different strategies. But what we get really excited about is the ones that are understanding the plant. And that's kind of our job to help them understand the plant. But it's like, what can you do to create unique experiences that lead formulation to be supportive of the brand? And that's something that we're going to see a lot more of. Right now, it's a pretty rudimentary approach. And this is born out of the regulated cannabis space where people talk about the ratios of the cannabinoids in the product and the terpenes in it. And then there's certain promises about that. I think when it comes to beverage, it's going to be less about cannabinoid identification and people just associating a certain feeling with a certain brand. And that's what I get really excited about in the future.
Interesting. And then one quick follow-up to that, based on what you just said, and it reminded me that at my HEB, which I do not believe carries hemp-derived THC, I've seen Breeze show up, but it's not THC Breeze, it's like adaptogenic Breeze. So
the lion's mane, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess do you guys use any nano-emulsion technology for adaptogens in beverages? And B, do you see more of these brands, regardless of what happens with the hemp loophole or what have you, going into the adaptogenic, making that other cross? Maybe if it like you mentioned, there was the cross from the regulated channels to the lower dose. Is there then another crossover to be had by a lot of these brands into just the adaptogenic space?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as a company, we have done certain projects where we've worked with active ingredient profiles and helped deliver those into products. We do see a number of brands either incorporating other active ingredients alongside the THC or creating these kind of adaptogenic products separate from it to diversify their approach. And we could probably thank Breeze for kind of giving people that strategy. Also, the appropriations bill and executive order last year also got some brands accelerating into this. Oh, we need to diversify and create some resiliency here. So that's happening naturally. And the way we think about it is like, how can you deliver the best experience in a product? So it's like, that's what cannabis is and THC is. It's delivering a new experience, and we're trying to put as much control and as much levers around that for the customers that we serve as possible. And so as we look at these different ingredients, what we care about is not only saying that it's in it, but making sure that people know how much should be in it and what they're consuming and what that feels like. And so our I mentioned like we have done some and some work, but what I really want to be able to promise our customers is like we know as much about the ingredients that we sell as we do about THC and CBD and other cannabinoids, right? And so our measure of excellence when it comes to these ingredients is kind of make us move a little bit slower, but we are certainly doing a lot of R&D around it.
Yeah, interesting. Well, cool. That's all I had to ask B. I don't know if you have one last question for Ben, which is, it's been a great chat, Ben. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you guys as well. Thank you.
I think maybe just where you see the intoxicating hemp space a year from now.
Yeah.
If you can look into the future.
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I see the intoxicating hemp as an opportunity to create a stepping stone for people to experience cannabinoids. I think it's going to be low dose. I think it's going to be limited form factors, but I do think it's going to continue to be supported into kind of this bifurcated market where you have low dose hemp available in most markets nationwide, and you have the economies of scale of being able to ship it from one state to the next. And then you have the more highly controlled, regulated cannabis marketplace that uses dispensaries and has higher dose products and leverages state-based systems. And so that will kind of be the initial step. You said next year. So that'll be the initial step of this kind of regulatory convergence. And what that lays the groundwork for is creating the necessary federal frameworks to have cannabinoid regulations, which don't really exist yet. And that's why it's been so hard and confusing to even get guidance on CBD from the FDA. So we need to kind of create these necessary building blocks. But from a high level, I do think that this category is going to create whole new consumer opportunities. Like it creates a whole new category of and moment of how consumers are consuming products and how they're thinking about consumer products. And that's really exciting from an entire industry perspective, from agriculture to supply chain, manufacturing, branding, marketing. Like it gives us all a new project to really wrap our heads around. And from our perspective, it's really just the tip of the spear for normalizing and eventually legalizing the entire plant, which gives us even more to play with.
Awesome. Well said, Ben. And as we usually say, we'd love to have you on again in 6 months to update then. That will be very interesting.
There'll be a lot of updates, I'm sure.
Be a lot of updates. But again, thanks again. And cheers. I hope all your dreams come true.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers.
We did forget to mention that Diana's going to be on stage at the summit in next week. So someone from Ben's team will be speaking to the hemp industry at the summit next week. So we're looking forward to that.
Looking
Thanks,
forward
Ben.
to having her. Cheers.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.